There's a whole group of people who can remember rotary phones and the first iPhone keynote, and even researchers struggle to place them neatly. If you were born between 1976 and 1985, you sit at the far end of Gen X, but you're not fully millennial either, even though people keep trying to force that label. Around 2014, some researchers started using the word Xennial, and a few sociologists called it a microgeneration because the time window is so narrow, and that narrow window matters. What happened during those exact years created a psychological profile that is genuinely worth looking at. So today, we're unpacking what makes this group unique. You started life in a fully analog world. Boredom wasn't a problem to fix. It was just something you sat through. You memorized phone numbers because you had to. If you missed your favorite TV show, that was it. You waited for reruns and hoped for luck. Then, right as you were becoming an adult, everything flipped. Fast. Not a slow transition. A full-on digital takeover. That timing changed a lot. Most generations grow up under one stable technology reality. Xennials didn't. You lived through two radically different systems while you were still forming your identity. Your late teens and your 20s didn't just feel different. They followed different rules entirely. Think about your social life as a teen. Passing handwritten notes in class. Conversations that vanished after they happened. Making plans with no live updates. No running late text. No pin drop. You picked a place and a time, and you trusted people would show. That required commitment in a way that's hard to explain now. Then your 20s arrived and suddenly everyone had cell phones. First Friendster, then MySpace, then Facebook. Before social platforms, most people had maybe 3 ways to reach someone: home phone, work phone, or physically showing up. Then it exploded into endless channels and notifications, and you adapted in real time. That adaptation happened during a critical brain development window. Research has shown the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain tied to planning, flexibility, and complex adaptation, keeps maturing until roughly age 25. That means many Xennials were still neurologically primed for learning and adjustment when technology changed almost overnight. You were young enough to learn the new world quickly, but old enough to remember exactly what came before it. That created something rare, a kind of cultural and cognitive bilingualism. Many Gen X adults met the internet after their habits were already fixed, which can make skepticism toward new tech more common. Younger millennials and Gen Z often have little or no lived memory of offline life, but Xennials can operate in both systems. You can hold eye contact in conversation without reflexively checking your phone, and you can still onboard new software without panic. You remember being unreachable for hours, truly unreachable. That memory changes how you think about attention, urgency, and boundaries. It also affects privacy in ways people don't always notice. You grew up before permanent documentation became normal. Most embarrassing moments did what human moments used to do. They faded. Awkward haircuts, messy breakups, bad party decisions. Unless someone retold the story, it disappeared. No searchable archive, no algorithm surfacing it years later. That changes your relationship with the past. Human memory is designed to be flexible. We revise, soften, and reorganize experience over time. But when life is continuously recorded and retrievable, that natural process gets interrupted. Your generation experienced both models, memory as living narrative and memory as permanent file. And just as you were finding your footing, another shock hit: the 2008 financial crisis. A lot of Xennials entered the workforce during or right after that collapse. The exact years that should have been about career launch and long-term stability were filled with layoffs, stalled salaries, debt pressure, and uncertainty. That timing has consequences. Financial stress during early adulthood often leaves a long tail. Even after income improves, the psychology doesn't instantly reset. It can shape risk tolerance, savings behavior, career decisions, and that quiet background fear that stability can vanish quickly. So, this generation learned 2 hard lessons at once: adapt quickly, and never assume the ground is stable. You became resilient because you had no choice, but resilience can come with vigilance. And this combination doesn't get discussed enough. Public generation debates usually flatten everyone into Gen X versus millennials, as if decades of people shared one identical experience. But birth years during periods of rapid change produce very specific psychological environments. Xennials often carry a paradox. You grew up with Gen X-style independence, less supervision, more unscripted time. Your parents often didn't know your location every hour, and that was normal. You learned to solve your own problems, manage boredom, and recover from small failures without constant intervention. At the same time, you became adults during the early internet era, when tech still felt hopeful, connective, and full of promise. Before the full consequences were obvious. Before everyone agreed that convenience can also fragment attention, identity, and trust. So you ended up in an unusual middle, independent but collaborative, skeptical but open, analog by memory and digital by fluency. Maybe that's the defining feature. You can hold contradictions without feeling broken by them. You remember the before and the after, which gives you a wider lens on what was gained and what was lost. You gained incredible access, information, opportunity, reach, speed. A younger version of you couldn't have imagined today's tools. But you also lost things, and you know it. The ease of being alone with your own thoughts, the patience built by waiting, the depth of presence that came from not being constantly interrupted. If you're in this microgeneration, you may have spent years feeling slightly out of place, too old in one room, too young in another, never fully claimed by either side. That isn't a flaw, it's the point. You were shaped in a transition zone. And in a world that keeps reinventing itself faster than people can emotionally process, that may be one of the most useful forms of experience there is. Knowing how to evolve without erasing who you are. The Xennial story matters for that reason more than any label debate. Not because this group is better, but because it lived through a rare historical crossover that taught a difficult skill the rest of culture is still learning. How to adapt without disappearing. If this spoke to your experience, subscribe for more deep dives like this.